Hi, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Indianapolis, Indiana.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
Hey guys, we've loved answering all of your questions so far. If you'd like to hear your question on the podcast, please send them to us on Instagram at wheeltalkpodcast or by email to wheeltalkpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. All right, started.
Started. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Becca.
Hi.
Are we playing Ticket to Ride tomorrow?
Are we?
I don't know, maybe.
Maybe.
That's become our weekend ritual to play Ticket to Ride.
Our Saturday night thing. I'll have to text Jen and see if she wants to play too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down.
I need more board games in my life, or some kind of games.
I know.
I asked Rachel the other day, I was like, hey, you want to play Skip Boat with me? She's like, no. Not interested.
She doesn't like games.
No. She is anti-games.
I feel like she had a lot of fun when we played Farkel, though. Spicy Farkel.
Farkel, yes.
Farkel.
EL.
Everybody's like, it's Farkle, Becca. No, it's not, because
Farkle is trademarked or something. So the one that we have
Farkle's
is Farkel.
But there's another, it's called Spicy Farkel. It's spelled Farkel.
No, it's not FER, it's FAR.
I said FAR.
You said FER, I think.
I've had a long day.
Yeah, you basically just woke up.
Spicy Farkel.
My dad was fucking killing it, and I was getting pissed.
Oh my god, that was so funny. His dad just totally smashed the entire game. The first game, he knew that he wasn't gonna win anything, so he kept
He was just stubborn. Roll until you farkle,
he was rolling until he was farkling. He got 400 points the whole fucking round, and then
10,000.
and then the next one he totally won. But I did really good on that one too, and then Rachel rode my wave.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and I got last place on that one.
Yeah, you did.
I still like to play even though I
right?
lose. I'm competitive, but I still like to play because I don't play that much, so...
Yeah, you're the best kind of person to play with board games because you are competitive, but if you lose, you're whatever.
Yeah. I'm along for the ride of playing, so it's pretty good.
That is something Eyes appreciates about you.
Did you say Eyes appreciate? You appreciates?
Yes, never mind. Everybody else that's seen Letterkenny will know that, but you won't.
No, went right over my head.
That's okay. That's what Eyes appreciates about you. Okay, how was your day?
Work as usual. Got down to the studio and yeah, I got a lot of stuff. I just got a lot of stuff out of the bisque kiln, so my shelves are piling up pretty good, which is nice. And just finished a batch of a few planters and some bowls and stuff. So I'm trying to mix up some of the different forms I'm doing. So Megan was over and prepped some clay for me and underglazed some tests because I'm having some issues with my underglazed mugs that keep failing. So I'm trying to get some tests together of do I need to try some different underglaze thicknesses of 2 layers versus 3 layers, but also testing, glaze thickness. I think the glaze thickness has a lot to do with it. So, and we just mix up a new batch of glaze. I'm trying to nail this down. It's confusing as hell because
Did you talk to Josh about it?
I didn't talk to Josh. I talked to Speedball about it. They were kind of let us know what you think. They do know that I'm using my own clear glaze. They were kind of maybe try the glaze that they gave me, which is a cone 6. Yeah. They gave me a gallon of glaze. So I'm going to try. I've got a few tests, so I'm going to try maybe one with my clear glaze with 2 coats of underglaze, and then one with their clear glaze with 2 coats, and the same with 3 coats, and see if there's something that stands out. Or maybe I'll do a few more with holding in the clear glaze for 3 seconds versus a second and a half or something. So it's like a thin coat of clear versus a thicker coat. 'Cause
And
I
you're
think,
doing Josh's bisque schedule, right?
yeah, I've always done that the last probably year or so, and I'm going
Okay.
to cone '06. Actually, I reached out to Leanne from Alon Pottery, and she was kind of giving me some ideas. She was kind of mentioning the bisque firing, that something about, the amount that it can absorb based on the temperature that it's fired to, because you might want it to be a little bit. I think she goes to 04 maybe.
So like a higher bisque, that might actually be it.
Yeah, so like a higher bisque, so it absorbs less clear
Yeah.
glaze. But I mean, I don't see
Yeah.
why you can't just do that by dipping it in and dipping it out like quicker, rather than changing a
I'll
bisque
tell you
firing just for
why.
underglaze.
I'll tell you why, because temperature is a lot more accurate than your hands.
But then I have to do an entire bisque firing for like 10 pieces.
Or you could just, well,
Do
have you
all
ever
of.
fired to 04 to see what it is? Are you at
No,
08 or 06?
I'm '06.
Okay.
I used to be '08, probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, but.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I guess that makes sense. She was saying something about the amount of absorption, and that like the underglaze needs to like soak in the glaze or something. But also somebody was telling me like, oh, well, we saw something from her, discussions about like where you got to rub the glaze in. Like she paints hers on and rubs it in, but that's on the like transfer stuff, because the transfers
Yeah.
don't like absorb it, because it's like a layer versus like the
Right.
underglaze, which is more like a clay. So
That is a conundrum for sure.
yeah, it's so aggravating, because I've got all these. I mean, you see all the mugs I'm taking out that are like messed up, because I'm trying to do this
Yeah.
custom order for somebody that's getting like 6 big mugs, and I keep making them. So this is the third time I've made them, and I've got probably 30 mugs that are like seconds quality with those
Are
issues on
you,
the outside.
holy shit. Are you, is your firing schedule for your glaze fast? Or is it, what's the speed for your firing schedule?
Fast to cone 5, 10-minute hold.
Okay.
Gets up to cone 6.
You should try doing it at slow.
The whole thing is slow.
Yes.
What explains that I've got?
Don't
I've
look
had
at me
40.
like that.
What happens? What happens with the 40 or 50 that I've done in the past that have came out perfect, and all of a sudden the
Well,
last 15 or 30 have come out bad?
what's the difference between those? Is it the clay?
I think the big difference is I'm to the bottom of my clear glaze bucket, and it's thicker than it has been in the past. I think
So
the
make new
glaze
clear.
is too thick. That's what I did. So that's one thing
Okay.
that I'm going to test, is like we mixed up a new batch of clear, and it's a lot fuller, and I can decide how. And I also have never used specific gravity in my glazes, so I'm going to try to get an idea of what that number is, and maybe understand
Yeah.
specific gravity a little bit more.
Yeah, I've never done specific gravity until I like worked with at Gravesco, and I still honestly don't totally know how to get to specific gravity, but I know how to measure it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I figured it out a little bit from reading John Brett's book, and we'll probably talk with Josh about it when we chat next time. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my thoughts. So we'll see. Actually, Rebecca did send me what her specific gravity is for the clear, I think,
Oh, good.
that she typically uses. So I'm going to use that as
Well,
my...
she uses the same clear as you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah,
got
I
some
gave
tests
up
to do. I'm to the point where I'm tired of just glazing the pieces that are supposed to go to this customer, and they keep fucking up, and
Yeah.
I keep having to remake them. So it's so
Yeah,
aggravating.
totally. Totally. What was I gonna say? I like gave up on your guys' clear. It didn't work on my clay, so but
I didn't even know
the
you
clear
used
from
clear.
Tacoma. What?
What did you use clear on?
The paint your own pottery stuff. And
But I thought your paint your own pottery was going to a lower temperature.
no, I did high fire paint your own or mid fire paint your own pottery as well, like stoneware.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
And those
all
ones I
04
like to
or
dip in
06.
clear just because it kind of makes it a little bit more flush.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
I just ended up going with Tacoma Clay Arts PZN clear, and it's on point. It is the best clear I've ever seen. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was my day. What about your day?
Well, that sounds exciting.
Is it exciting?
My day was, yeah,
I don't
kind of.
think that's exciting.
Let's see. My day, I had a kind of weird day today because I there was a lot of introspective thinking about like life and stuff that I won't really get into this on the podcast, but it was kind of weird in that regard. I started out doing really well. I make about 125 pieces a day, and usually it takes me like 5 to 6 hours with breaks and stuff. But today it just took way longer because I had to. I had to figure out a new shape, and it took a little while, and I was trying to get it better than, it's a little specific. So, but I'm
So you're
tired.
doing all
Like,
that introspective thinking while you're throwing during the day?
Yeah.
Or is it like during breaks you're just thinking, or is it like you're
No, while
getting
I
into
was
the
throwing.
groove? Yeah.
Yeah, while I was throwing, so it was like kind of slowing me down, bumming me out a little bit. But also I've been like going through some. I think I might be intolerant to eggs, which is like a super bummer, especially since I'm on a new pasta adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been having some like joint pain and stuff, and I think it's totally 100%, correlated to food. So
What's
I think
an
it might be
intolerance
eggs.
different from like an allergy or something? Is that like a soft allergy?
I guess. I don't know for sure. I think intolerance essentially they come and go. They can come and go whether you're like, um, like allergies usually involve like hives, and I mean obviously you can have other situations with allergies, but like I think that intolerances vary, and they can come and go. Like you could have an intolerance to bananas and then not eat bananas for a long time, and then eat them, and then you're fine, you know.
Yeah.
And like, or you can have it like every once in a while instead of having it every day. It's not going to be an issue with.
Yeah.
And like allergies is like, like you have to have an EpiPen and stuff like that potentially. So
I have the
yeah.
opposite with bananas. I used to eat bananas all the time, and then in the last probably, I guess it's been like eight years or so, I was like eating bananas, and then I would just salivate a lot, and I think it's because my throat was swelling, and then I would just
Really?
salivate and just like drip saliva everywhere.
That's gross.
So, yeah, I avoid bananas now.
Yeah, see, you might have just had a banana overload.
But it would be like, and then I was like, maybe it's because I'm eating on an empty stomach and it's too much sugar at one time, or whatever. And I don't know. So I just avoid bananas. I don't even eat like banana bread or anything. I might occasionally eat like a bite, but
Yeah. Oh, I do have some exciting news though.
oh,
Yeah. I ordered a neon art piece from
oh yeah, I
a,
saw the
a
box, but I didn't see you open it yet.
I haven't opened it yet because it's like a kind of intense and I haven't been here for a long period of
Like a
time.
pry bar to get it open.
Yeah, it's like this huge wooden box that I can repurpose into like a bench, which is perfect.
Did you already have those pillows that go on it?
Yeah, I have these cushions,
Oh,
and they are Urban Chic. That's the brand, and they're really expensive. But I was a neighbor with them at a show, and so I bought a bunch of these cushions, and I was planning on using them as a bed in my van when I was redoing the van, and then that never happened. And I did sleep on them when I was in Leavenworth and stuff. And this box is the exact same size as the cushion.
yeah. I was like, did you get the box as like a dual purpose? Like they shipped that, but it also fit your cushions somehow.
Yeah, and
And then I'm
so
like, did she ship the cushions with it or what?
yeah, no, the box came and I was like, this is a perfect size. It's like maybe 2 inches too long for the cushions, which is fine. And so
Like an
anyway,
ottoman.
I got a box with neon art and I'm gonna install it on the brick in my apartment. And I'm really excited. It was this girl on TikTok, Caroline, and think her last name is Cava, Caroline Cava. And I'm just really stoked. It's abstract, so no words or anything like that. And yeah, I have to take him out. I didn't want to take him out and leave him out with the cat, so
Yeah.
it's just been kind of closed. But then the box, I'm gonna drill a hole. She was like, I knew that if I sent you all these things, you'd be able to repurpose them. She gave me like cushions, like seat cushions, and I was like, I need cushions for my chairs. like,
Oh, so that's what
like
she wrapped it in?
yeah, she wrapped it in like padding, like the padding for upholstery padding, and
Oh, okay.
and I was like, I need that stuff. Like,
Nice.
anyway. And so all the stuff that she wrapped it in, I can reuse. And then I'm going to put a hole in the side of the box, make the top of the box a bench, and then put a hole in the side of the box and make the inside for Lloyd.
That's a good idea. I was like, ooh, it sounds like a little like Tom and Jerry, like they got the hole in the side of the wall so that Lloyd can go in there
And chill out. And maybe he'll stop yelling at me. It would be great.
I saw the box and I was like, oh, that's gotta be a bitch to pack and ship. I don't even know how
I know. It was like $125 to ship.
Holy shit. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm guessing they had it on a truck or something and they had to wheel it to your door on a like, how did you get it in your place? Was it on a dolly or something?
There's an office downstairs, so I wasn't there when they delivered it. But it's probably like it's probably like a 3 foot by 3 foot by 1.5 foot box.
Yeah.
And
wooden crate.
yeah, the apartment manager texted me and she was like, "There's a box down here and it looks very exotic."
Fragile, must be Italian.
And there was like 20 fragile stickers, which I totally appreciated. I was like, "That's hilarious." So, yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I will post a picture when it's done. I think Rebecca's going to try, like, I asked her if she could help me put it up on Sunday, so we're going to do it on Sunday.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, you'll need some fancy drill bits to get into the brick and stuff.
Yeah, I can't drill directly into the brick, but I can drill into the mortar between the bricks, so.
Right.
Yeah, which I would never want to drill directly into a brick anyway, but. Yeah, so that's that. That's the exciting news of the week.
Nice. Yeah, that's going to be super cool.
I'm really excited about it. I spent a chunk of change on it, but I'm really excited that it's not attached. It's 6 pieces in total. 2 of them look like L's, 2 of them are straight, and then 2 of them are wiggly. Mm-hmm. And so what's cool about it is that I'll put it up the way it's supposed to be here, but then if I ever move, I can always change it and I can, put it in any shape or figuration that I want to, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so what are we doing today?
Let's do a couple short questions. And then we'll go into the longer questions here. So the short ones are going to definitely be related to Becca's expertise here. So the first one is, what's the best way to learn production techniques? This is from Chef Bear Bowls on Instagram. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, he's making me a bowl.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, we're going to trade.
The best way to learn production techniques.
So I think that the best way to learn production techniques is, consistency is key. I think that, oh God, why did I just blank? Okay, so.
Consistency in what?
Techniques. Consistency in your movements is really important. So like, what I do is the first like 5 or 10 pieces, I find out what's the easiest way for me to make this piece and to make the size and the shape that I want. And then I consistently do those movements over and over and over again. I don't change the way that I'm doing anything. That's key. I think that's almost the most important thing. You don't change the way that you're doing it unless you're changing the shape or like adjusting something within the design. So you want to be like when I start, I know that I cone up, I make it into a mound, and then I put my fingers in, I pull out, and then while my left hand is pulling out, I reach into my water bucket, I come down, get the water wet, and then I go into my first pull, and then I compress while I'm reaching into the water, and then I, wet the water, and then I go into my second pull, and it's just a very consistent process.
Yeah.
And then like towards the end, I always clean off the bottom. While I'm cleaning off the bottom, I'm putting away my tool. While I'm putting away my tool, I'm picking up my cutters, and then I'm swiping under, and then I'm putting the cutter back, and then picking up my pot lifters, picking up the piece and putting it out. Like every single time it's the same. Every single time my piece, and I think that it's really important to have your tools in a very accessible location. Like for instance, I see a lot of potters that have tools like in a tool holder, which is fine. I think it's fine. But if you are making the same piece over and over, you're going to be using the same tools over and over. So you need to make those accessible. So like I don't have a splash pan, so I have a sponge that sits against the wheel head between my bucket, and because my wheel's a little different. So anyway, so there's a little tiny, so this car sponge that I have, I always put my trimming tool on the top of that, whatever I'm going to clean the bottom of my base off with. I always put it on top of that. If I'm using bats, I have the knife under my wheel head so that I always have it in the same spot. I have my needle tool in my sponge. It sticks in the sponge. And and that's all on the right side. And then I have my cutter on the left side, and it's draped over something so I can easily grab it, and then I have my pot lifters. Instead of them both being on the right side, so I know a lot of people, and not a ton of people use pot lifters, but we do. And there also, that's another thing, like trying to find tools that'll help you, like pot lifters. You don't have to wipe your hands off if you have pot lifters, so that helps you out with two things. That helps you out with dryness. So if you're not wiping your hands constantly, your hands aren't getting super dry. And you don't have to wipe them off, so that saves you time. So a lot of people have pot lifters just on one side. I have pot lifters on both sides. So that way I can just reach both of my hands out, left and right, and grab them, and then put it up, and then I just put them down. My wheel, I feel like, is extremely well laid out in the sense where it has a lot of room for you to like put things on it. A lot of wheels don't have a lot of accessibility, like especially like the Shimpo RK2s, they have like no table. So sometimes you have to like jerry rig tables and stuff like that. But I think that having everything in a place that is efficiently positioned is really important.
And by production, that could be speed, that could be consistency in the pieces.
Yeah.
It could be the quantity that you're making. Like when I hear production, like all those things kind of come to mind. Like a lot of what you were talking about is efficiency and just kind of muscle memory sort of things. What's a good thing for somebody to just like saying, I just want to get more consistent? Is it about first starting with like always weigh the same amount of clay and be intentional about what you're making in the moment? Like don't let the clay kind of take you where it wants.
Yeah. You should know what you're going to make before you make it. That's big. Know what you're going to make before you make it. And
like if you're making a mug, don't be like, I could do a bellied mug or I could do a straight mug. Like do all the same.
Yeah, choose a shape. Choose a shape. Sorry, I kind of did get on a little bit of a tangent.
You're good.
Choose a shape. I don't know if you know or anything, but I'm kind of passionate about efficiency. Choose a shape. Choose a weight. So find out what weight you're going to be using, like for your clay. Make sure you do a test beforehand too. Like make sure you figure out your piece and what it's going to weigh and everything like that before you weigh out all of your clay and stuff like that. But like weigh out your clay. So like if I'm gonna do wine glasses, my wine glasses are 14 ounces, so I'm gonna weigh out 14-ounce balls of clay. If you want to be really, really consistent, using, and this is actually part of our second question, using a gauge is really important and helpful. And you can either buy a gauge or you can make one. There's multiple types of gauges. I can't remember what the T one is called, where it's like it's the Japanese one where you put it inside.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but like basically it's a T, and I've made them just with chopsticks, and you just cut them off at the certain point, and then you make it so the height hits the bottom, and then it tees out, and that
to the
way,
width. It's mostly for like a bowl.
Yeah, for like a bowl, and then but then you can also just make a regular throwing gauge, and a lot of people just put a slat like a ball of clay on their bucket and put a chopstick in it and just position it to your first piece, what you like, and then you just keep throwing to that. I personally like to put it out probably like a 1/4 inch, say the right height, but like just out a 1/4 inch so that
it's not right on the piece.
Yeah, so it's not right on the piece. That way you can get it off. You can, that's something that I've been like kind of working with, working at Gravesco. And so you can make one just with a chopstick and clay, or you can buy a throwing gauge. The only place that I know that sells them is Euclid's, and I think that's a Canadian company.
Euclid's. There was so that second question was, what is the name of that device in the picture that helps you throw consistent and where to buy one? That was from G63 Studio.
Yeah.
There was one that a friend of mine bought from somebody that's a maker or woodworker or something, and she got it offline. There was like not a Kickstarter, but he was just making a batch of them. So
I think that I would have preferred one that was like wood that you could mark your positions and stuff.
This one had like a couple different things. It had like the arms on it, so it was like a vertical arm and it stood freestanding on the wheel head part.
Yeah.
And then it had like 2 marks to like adjust like horizontally, and then like if you wanted
belly.
to do
a belly.
So you can just have like 2 different gauges or something like that.
Yeah, I have one of those. So I have a Euclid's one. It's a metal one. Similar concept. The problem with the Euclid's is that their mechanisms for tightening it is really annoying. It's like a turning knob on one side, but then it's a flathead screw on the other side. So you can't get it like really tight unless you actually have a screw.
So it's not like a wing nut?
Yeah, it should be a wing nut on both sides, but it's not.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with that. But that's an easy fix if you go to Ace Hardware, or any hardware store.
What about the production with like wheel speed? Is that just muscle memory? Like personally, I keep the wheel pedal on the top of the wheel and I do it by hand, and I just basically pick a setting, set it, forget it, use the same speed for coning up, coning down, opening, and my first pull, and then I change it. Like, how do you do that when you always keep your foot on the wheel the whole time?
Yeah,
is that just muscle memory?
What's strange? Yeah, I think so. What's strange is that also a lot of people have wheels that have pedals that kind of lock into place. Like your pedal
for my Brent and for my speedball, or clay
your
balls.
pedal for your speedball. Even if you had it on the floor, if you let go of it, it would keep the same speed.
Right. Okay.
And I
you're just like a gas pedal, right? It'll go back if you take your foot off.
Right. So I mean, like, well, my wheel at my personal studio is like that. Not my new wheel, but because I learned on that wheel, and like not really learned, but got better on that wheel. I do have that. So I had to keep my foot on the pedal all the time. So I literally throw clay like I'm driving a car. Like and especially with this new wheel, I don't notice that I'm like slowing down sometimes because I'm like lifting off off the pedal. And so like I will slow down at specific spaces and I'll speed up at specific spaces. So I think that that's very personal. the way that you do that, you know, because I know a lot of people like you that keep it the same speed. I have never kept it the same speed. I speed up on the coning, I speed up on the centering, I
Mm-hmm.
speed up on the first pull, I slow down on the second pull. I am even slower on, you know, I'm like, I'm very variable
Yeah.
with speed.
And you're throwing water on when you need to, and
Yeah, I throw
all
water
that.
on maybe 3 times.
Yeah, all that kind of factors into the clay you're using and the speed that your wheel's at and all that kind of thing. So
I also think that something that we don't really talk about in production very much, and I would say that most people don't think that this is important, but I do, is cleaning up your wheel as you go. And because I don't use a splash pan, but what I've noticed with a lot of production uh, people is that they never clean up their wheels, like, or they will eventually, but you know, it's not a very clean environment. And I've found that cleaning as you go is really helpful, and it, you know, you have to think about your production not only as you producing pots, but also as you coming in and going out of the studio. So like, if it takes you 45 minutes to clean your wheel because it's caked in clay, that's not helping you at all. But
or
if
you
you're
just
cleaning
don't
it,
clean the wheel at all.
yeah, or you don't clean it at all. But like, I think that cleaning it as you go is a very like good practice to get into. Like, I clean my wheel at the end of the day every single day, you know, and but it takes me 4 minutes because I'm always cleaning as I'm throwing, you know. And somebody on TikTok actually just posted a video today, and I never thought about it, but he was like, if you want to practice throwing with less water, which is also another production tip, is to throw with a little bit less water. That's give or take. A lot of production potters throw with a ton of water, but it does help as far as slop is concerned. Uh, but if you want to kind of practice cleaning up a little bit as you go, take your splash pan and just take the front of it off. Not the part that's towards you, but the front of it. Just take it off, because then you'll realize how much clay is whipping off of the wheel, and you'll just generally just start to clean your wheel head a little bit more,
Yeah.
and it helps, like, you know, it just helps that become muscle memory.
Yeah, there's tons of production stuff
So
to
much.
keep in
There's
mind.
so much.
And this
Maybe we
question
should
could
do
mean
this
a
as a full
variety of,
episode.
and this production stuff could be a variety of things. You know, it could be people that are brand new and they're just like, I want to throw more consistent, or it could be
Yeah.
like, I'm throwing 20 things, but they're not quite the same. Or
Right. I also think
I'm
timing
taking way too
yourself
much
is
time.
really important.
Yeah. Do we have any other production
Sorry, I
questions
cut
in
you
here
off.
that we could add to
I
it?
know. Should we just change this episode? Like,
We could.
midway through.
What?
We could.
We could do that. I mean, we're already at 32 minutes, so
Well, we might as well.
we might as well. Let's do it. To hell with it. We were going to talk about Instagram questions. This was going to be social media part 3, but to hell with it. We could do that another
The
time.
hell with it.
What other? Okay, so another question I have: how many pieces would you recommend somebody should focus on making of the same thing? Obviously, you're a little different because you're making like such large quantities. Like, expecting somebody to make
Right.
125 of something is probably not realistic.
No, that's not realistic. I would say start with 20 and move up from there. Like, my gut reaction is to say 50 to 100, like way out 50. But here's what I mean by that is that, like, I think especially in production, like, if you want to get faster and better and consistent, you're going to have to work on being faster and consistent. And what we gloss over, I think, especially in education, is that, or not gloss over, but maybe focus too much on in education, is the fact that is is that you're like focusing on form and you're focusing so much on the very particular things. And if I believe if you took 50 pounds of clay, 51-pound balls of clay, and threw them as fast as you could, and if one of them has an issue, you just trash it. You know, if you take 50 pounds of clay and you have no intention on keeping any of those pieces of clay, I think you're going to learn way more because you've thrown out the like the connection to it. You know, you're not keeping any of that clay. Like, there's never a use. The whole purpose of that clay is to teach you.
It's like
And
you're
so,
going to the batting cages and you're just hitting 50 baseballs.
Right.
Like you're
And you
throwing
just hitting
50 pots and
yeah,
like, you
and
don't
it's
have to
like,
have an end result there.
there's no end result. It's just focusing on your form and focusing on the process that you're working on, and not even the form as much, because the form will follow if you do the same function every time. You know? Like,
Yeah, how do you
would
know
you
where
agree?
to
What do
how
you
do you
think?
know where to trim parts of the making? Like what's something
Oh,
that you've learned consciously to like remove from your process?
I feel like we're at ClayCon West. Um, this is exactly what I talked about at ClayCon West, and now I'm like
Yeah,
forgetting.
she gets all nerdy about the efficiency stuff.
I do. Pause while I open up my champagne. Bev.
Drink
Drink
Bev.
Bev. Hey, they're
Now
in
word from our
stores, by the way.
sponsor. Are they
They're going to
local to
be in
you?
stores, by the way. They're going to be in Target.
Nice. In the
Anyway,
states where they don't deliver to?
I fucking hope so.
You're like, I'm traveling. I'll go within 3 hours to get Bev.
Yeah. Okay, anyway. Okay, so talking about what steps you can take off of your process. This is okay.
Obviously, one thing that comes to my mind, like you don't have to, once you get used to what you're doing, you don't have to do the whole needle tool at the bottom, measure the thickness of the
Oh
bottom. Like
god.
that's an easy one. Throw that out. Like once you're
You
experienced
can
enough,
throw that away.
definitely throw
Throw
that
it
one
out of the
out.
way. You
You
should
know
be
what you're
throwing
doing.
that away after year 1 anyway.
Um, what about the whole? I
I
don't know.
think using your clay to the most is something too. So like what I this would be a really great podcast if this was visual right now. Um
Explain it as best as you can.
I know this is good. So what I would recommend is you know when you go into the mound, like after you've coned your piece,
You got your
okay?
tuna can shape,
Got your tuna can,
or your
yes, or your
tall
hockey
tuna
puck or
can,
whatever. I feel like a lot of the times the tuna can looks more like a dome, and it flattens out kind of like at the bottom, like a mountain range. You know,
like a
it
skirt. Yeah.
yeah, it has a skirt. So it has a skirt that goes down. That skirt needs to be eliminated. Okay, that's just waste. What you're doing right there, right? So that's eliminate that. So how to eliminate that is when you come down to your cone, you can scoot the skirt in. You
With
can
like your
scoot this.
pinky or something.
I scoot the skirt in with the bed of my middle finger, but a sponge will do too. If you're not careful enough, you can really wear down your middle finger's fingernails. So
Oh, you're like doing
I
it.
used to.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I used to use my fingernails to scoot it in because that's kind of like a rib. You know, your fingernail's like a natural rib. But I've learned to use just the finger bed.
Yeah, like the very
and
strong tip of your finger.
yeah, so using that and scooting that in so it's more of a right angle, like a 90-degree angle instead of a skirt. So that's good for eliminating that, because then what that does is that cuts off time at the end that you have to cut off your clay. And a lot of the times when I'm seeing a lot of people throw, that could be like 0.3 ounces of clay, and 0.3 ounces of clay is a lot of clay. So
If you do
you
that
know,
every single time and you cut that piece off because you need that beveled underside,
yeah,
why is that piece not being pulled into the wall of the form
exactly,
and getting another, you know, quarter of an inch higher piece or something like that?
exactly. So so that's one way you can really cut down a lot of waste and a lot of time. And
And that's
I
all
think
during your pulling, right? That's not. I was thinking that was when you first cone down. I thought that's what you said. When you first cone down from the
yeah,
dome, you do that. But you're saying
yeah,
it doesn't. That skirt doesn't get there anymore as you're, you know, doing your pulls and stuff. Like
yeah.
you're putting a
Once you've
firm
pushed it
grip
in,
on the
it's
bottom
done.
on the bat, pushing
Yeah,
that in, and then going up, so that there's no
yeah.
chance that it's like sliding under.
Right. And once that's like in and in its place, it should stay there. You know, you don't really need to scoot it out anymore. Now, the only difference also is okay, so once you have your hockey puck and you put the hole in, okay, in the middle, and then you're pulling out your base. A lot of people pull out wider than they need to, which makes sense, especially if you're doing a cylinder. So if you pull out wider, what I like to do is once I pull out into my donut, I I pull out and then I'll use my pinkies and I tuck them under and I scoot that skirt back in because sometimes it likes to move out a little bit. So I'll scoot it back in. And what that does is that it moves the clay in and it also moves the clay up. So it's positioning you to have a finger, like a hole or a space, I guess, for your finger to move the clay up for your first pull, but it's also kind of scooting the clay into more of a vertical position instead of like a flatter position. It's
Like a
giving you a little
flatter
bit more height.
volcano, it's more
Yeah,
tight and already kind of a cylinder
yeah,
shape.
yeah. So, is this making sense?
I mean, I know it because I remember what you were talking about, and with the
we need
demonstration
to
part. What
we
about
need to
the
make sure that when we release this, we also release a video of me throwing.
yeah, from the ClayCon West? That's exactly what we need. I might have a
Yeah,
video of that actually.
okay. We
Um,
got to remember that. Um,
what about the like
yeah,
water usage? Do you actually have to stick the sponge in and like get the water out when you're throwing at Gravesco before you finish the piece?
yeah.
Yeah.
I still have
Okay.
a tiny bit of water in there, but it's only like it's just a smidge.
Okay.
Um, Now, here's another thing that is very controversial. I don't compress my bases, and I never have, and I never will. So, the
On
base of
on what pieces though? Everything? I mean, plates.
on
You can say
everything.
that
Oh, I mean,
you
plates
do
are
even it.
plates are a completely different process. Like that's not even you're not even throwing a cup at that point. You're just like that's a whole different process. You have to make sure everything's even.
So you're
So,
saying not compressed bases. You're talking about what forms?
cups, bowls.
Okay. So all the
That's
typical
it.
forms
That's
that are
about it.
not plates. Okay. Cups and bowls. Okay.
Custom bowls. So I don't really compress my bases. Now I will pull it out and then I continue on. I make sure there's a nice clean spiral in the bottom and that's it. So a lot of people will tell you have to compress your base or else you're going to get an S crack. I don't believe that to be true. You can fight me on it. That's fine. I've thrown thousands of pots, but whatever. That doesn't mean anything. Um, what
I like to go out and then like once back into the middle. Sometimes I kind of
yeah,
like the like out and
I
then
think
back to
that's
the middle.
fine. I also think that's fine if you want to like make it a little prettier on the bottom, you know.
Yeah.
I don't, but that's just because that's who I am. So, so I don't compress the base, and that cuts off a ton of time, on my,
Also,
you know.
you're assuming that you've made enough that when you open consistently. You've got a strong grip with like the tips of your fingers when you're doing the open, and it's a nice consistent thickness, and you're pulling,
Yeah,
evenly.
I'm a
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm I'm a culprit of making my bases too thin. So I'm working on that. I'm getting a lot better. But
I have that problem sometimes
yes.
too.
Oh yeah.
Because I never trim the inside. Like, I never trim
Right.
the bottoms or anything. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the key, and then it will. Why I never compress my bases is because my bases are consistent all the way through. Okay? So they're flat all the way through. My walls are also flat pretty much all the way through. They might be a tiny bit thicker at the base because I like a little bit more weight at the base because I throw pretty thin pieces. But consistent drying is the key, in my opinion, to S-cracks, to solving S-cracks. Flipping things if you need to, whatever. But thickness and consistent drying is what I have found to be what helps with S-cracks, not necessarily compression of the base of the piece. In fact, a lot of people would say that compression is a myth.
I mean, compression is a form of evening out the thickness too.
Yeah.
So you could say, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, and when I teach, I make sure to say, I'm like, make sure your bottom is, the base of your piece is even, it's flat. You want it to be, if anything, you want it to be thinner at the middle than at the outside. The reason being is because when your pieces are drying, they are shrinking inward. If your pieces are drying and shrinking inward and your outside parameter is thinner than your inside of the base, the outside is going to dry faster than the inside, and what that's going to do is it's going to shrink and it's going to shift, much like an earthquake. So it's going to scoot in, scoot aside, and that's where you're getting your S-crack from, is because outside is shrinking faster than the inside.
Like it.
Yeah. So, and that's also plates too. Same with plates. P.S.
Yeah.
So, wow.
How do you
so much better.
Are there other conscious decisions that you've made along the way that you remember, like, I don't need to do that, or like, you don't, do you use a rib or anything on the outside to clean the slurry off or clean the water off or anything before you take it off the wheel?
I mean, I don't, but that's because I put throwing rings in most of my stuff. Like with the new stuff that I'm doing, I am ribbing them off like pretty consistently, and it's taken me a while because it's very specific to the style. But no, I'm not a ribber. So that's like, I feel like that's kind of a personal preference.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that now here we go about compression. I do compress my rim. It's just easier to say compress instead of like flatten. I flatten the rim, right? But I compress it. I feel like I know that it sounds like I just like contradicted myself saying compression's a myth. But I think that specifically compression of the base is a myth. Okay, there we go. That clears me. So
contradiction over.
Okay, so I compress the rim of my piece while I'm throwing it up for the first pull. So the way that my hand is positioned on the clay, my pinky is right in the groove of my pinky. It's like, it's wrapped over it. And so when I'm pulling it up, it's pushing down on the clay.
Your left hand, while your right hand is doing the pulling outside. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's performing two functions, my right hand. So I'm pinching the clay and I'm pulling it up, and I'm supporting with my left middle finger on my thumb nail. And
this is very good audio.
I know. And I'm pulling, I feel like people that throw are going to know what I'm talking about. And so I'm pulling up, but while I'm pulling up on that side, I'm pushing, I have my hand angled down a little bit, and I'm pushing down on the rim while it's going up. So it's creating tension on that rim. So it's kind of like moving the molecules together and pushing them down so when I get that first pull up, I don't have to worry about compressing or flattening out the rim to make sure that it's evened out. Remember that evening out your rim after each pull is going to even out your pieces all together going up. you should be doing it after every single step.
Yeah, or else it's
Even
just going
after
to
the
get
donut.
dramatically more like
Wavy.
undulating
Yeah.
if you don't do it until the last one. Yeah, I've noticed that with my bottles. Like, hey, if it's starting to get crazy, like compress it, because
Yeah.
once you start necking that thing in, it's gonna get even wonkier. So make sure it's consistent.
I think the best advice that one of my college professors ever gave me was that centering is it's a it's a continual process through the entire piece. You know, you're you're not just centering that first mound of clay. You're centering, like when you're pulling out, you're making sure that it's centered again. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and then when you're pulling up, you're making sure that it's center again by like making sure that rim is pushed down and flattened out so that it's consistent all the way around. When you pull up again, you're making sure it's center again. Like centering goes until the very last step. And
We've all seen that when you're learning. If your thing's not centered, it's gonna get even worse the further into that piece you get if
yeah,
it's not centered.
it's like it's a contact sport, man.
I mean, the whole point of the wheel, like, it's pushing out from the middle, so it doesn't want to be centered. So, I mean, what we're doing with keeping it perfectly centered and all that, it's like, that's why it takes skill and practice.
Yeah, totally. God, I can't wait to listen to this episode. Oh.
You were like, what the fuck was I talking about? Well, you're going to know because you do it every day with the hand
I
positions
know.
and stuff. I mean, some of the people also throw certain ways, and like, I had a question. Sponge, no sponge. I know you do. Go ahead. When you're pulling and
Oh,
stuff. Or just period. I
I
don't know. Do you use the sponge at all?
I use a sponge. I was taught to use a sponge while throwing. I eventually exited out of that routine. Um, I think mostly because I don't have a splash pan. Because a lot of people that do use a sponge when they're throwing, they have a lot of excess water that go out. When I'm adding water to my piece, I add like 5 droplets of water. I
Yeah,
just kind of like
you're not
move.
like you're not like cupping your hand and like pouring it. You're just like getting your
Uh-uh.
hands wet and like throwing it at the piece
Yeah.
to like get your other
I'm
hand
like,
wet and then like keep going.
right. Yeah, and so, but like I was throwing a piece the other day and I was like, oh, this might be beneficial if I could get the sponge and like kind of make sure that it's becoming wet, it's like getting wet all the way. That's when I was accidentally throwing 1 pound planters into what should have been 1.5 pound planters. And I didn't know that I picked the wrong size.
Oh, so you were stretching a 1 pound planter into a 1.5 size?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it was a bit.
that's a pretty thin
And
planter then. That needs
yeah,
a little more heft to it.
yeah. So anyway, so I was thinking, I think that a sponge might actually work better in this. So there is a way that you can hold your sponge in your hand while you're throwing, and it gradually releases the water while you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
moving up. That is super helpful with bigger pieces, like a 10 pound planter or a 7 pound, 7 pound, 6 pound, somewhere in there. Um, if I'm throwing larger pieces, I do use a sponge to kind of like, squeeze the water over.
Gives you a bigger
Um,
surface area too. Do you like? Is that the part that you like more? I never got used to the hand positions of getting a good grip and like using, I guess, the strong part of my fingertip to like really push in when I'm pulling. I just haven't figured that out. So I've learned with the sponge. I use the sponge like the whole time. It's just what
oh
I'm
yeah,
used
like
to.
you throw with the sponge. Yeah, yeah, I know. It's kind of weird. Like there's definitely like
And I see
a
people like do the
split.
knuckle thing, like kind of
Oh, the
bend.
knuckles are
And I'm
nice
like I'm
for.
like I kind of get that because you're kind of using like the part between your your middle knuckle and your like closer to your fingertip knuckle, and like using that
Yeah.
flat part maybe as like kind of like a rib or something to like
Yeah, it's
kind of
nice for when you're
push.
throwing large pieces to use your knuckle because then it really helps you like get under the clay and move it up as efficiently as possible. But yeah, it's funny how there's like sponge throwers and not sponge throwers at all. And like when
Yeah,
I use a sponge is to clean up the water on the outside
to get the water
and
out.
the
Yeah.
inside. And that's it. Um But yeah, and like I said, if I'm throwing a really large piece, yeah, I'll probably use a sponge, and I might even use it to throw with it. It all
Yeah.
depends on how large the piece is. So I typically, if you don't know, I typically throw small pieces. I throw anything from like 2 pounds and under is what my sweet spot is, and that's kind of where I like to be. So
Yeah.
um yeah. Another thing too, specifically for bowls, I feel like, especially if you're making just a general, like, the classic U-shaped bowl, I, we're always taught to go straight up and then go out, and I feel like bowls
Are
are
we
the one.
always taught that? I feel like
I
there's
feel like we
different people
are.
that teach it a different way.
Well, they're teaching it wrong.
I think I
I'm
did
kidding.
initially learn. I learned to like pull it straight up into a cylinder, like use a rib to like lay the top down, like
Yep.
the top edge down, and then like go from the middle and go up to that flat edge, and then do it
Mm-hmm.
again, lay it down, and then like slowly go from the middle outward
Yeah,
to the
I
top
learned to go
edge
straight up, scoot out the edge, and go down from the top
to the middle.
to the
Okay.
to the bottom, and then up and then out again, which I feel like creates a beautiful curve. However, I think that there's a little bit of a you can
That seems inefficient to do it that way.
it is.
But you
It
have to
is.
really
So,
like understand the clay height, what it should be at the beginning, to see what it's going to stretch out to be and know the thickness that it can like withstand.
right.
Yeah.
So when I throw a bowl, I do throw a cylinder first. So I throw a cylinder first. That's my first pull. And then the second pull, I throw a Y. And that's my S pull, but I'm throwing it out to the width of what I want it to be, essentially. So height first pull is my crab pull, my pinch pull.
Like a
That's
wide
the
cylinder.
yeah, and then my second S pull, which is the height pull, I throw out to a Y to how wide I want my bowl to be, and then the third pull I create the shape.
Yeah.
And there's
That's
no
pretty much what I
pulling
do
in that.
too.
Yeah.
You're getting a little bit more height on that third one just to get some of that excess clay from the foot like
Yeah.
up.
You know who's the best video I've ever seen on how to throw a bowl is Simon Leach. And his, what are those called? His
Oh, I
OG
know.
bowls.
OG,
What
yeah.
are they OG bowls?
No, I
No.
thought it was POG or no.
I don't know.
Oh, it's something OG though.
It is something OG.
PPG bowl, I think is what he calls it. Is that right?
Something like that. I don't know. But his tutorial on those bowls is so good. I remember watching it and being like, yes, this is great.
Googling it right now. I want to say it's PPG
H-
or something.
H-
GP bowl.
I don't know.
I don't know what GP stands for, but
General purpose.
GP bowl, general purpose. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
His general purpose bowls, GP bowls, are phenomenal. So definitely go look at his on that.
Yeah, I mean, just what we were talking about the bowls. I mean, you cut out a number of steps. Like, if you threw every bowl like you learned to throw it, where you lay the thing down and then go to the middle and go back out, like, that just sounds inefficient. And you're pushing your. I mean, you really have to be conscious of. I don't know. You got to like have the exact amount of clay to the right height before you even start that stretching, which
Yeah.
is hard to know unless you've done it a bunch of times. Like at
That's
least
true.
with the steps that you're doing now with the wide cylinder pulling it out, like after that second pull, you're pretty confident that it's almost the exact shape it needs to be. And then your last one's just
Yeah.
a little refinement. It's not like you're kind of stretching as you go.
Yeah. Oh, it also depends on your clay too. Like, so at work we have two different types of clay, brown bear and then big turtle. And brown bear is like a dark stoneware. It's dark brown and it's a very smooth stoneware. That is pugged in the Shimpo pug mill and it's de-aired. The speckled turtle is more of a groggy stoneware and it's a lighter brown and a tan, and it is pugged in a bluebird and it is not de-aired. And that clay is such a fucking bitch. I
What if it
hate
was
it.
de-aired? Would it be way better?
Yes, it would be way better. Um, but it comes out short, and so the way that I would normally throw bowls wasn't working for that
Have to
specific clay.
change.
You have to like go a little bit slower, because if you don't go slow, if I work it like I would work any other clay, it's gonna look ripped on the sides.
Yeah.
So it also, like clay is your variable, right? So you do have to kind of work with what you have. So like in that case, I can't really pull it out wider.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to kind of like adapt my throwing method, especially for the little crumbles that I do. I was pulling them out to a Y and doing what I normally do, and my rims were ripping because they were just getting too far stretched too
Yeah.
quickly. And so I had to start pulling a cylinder and then pulling like another cylinder, but like have it kind of, I don't
Start
know
to
how to explain
get
it.
bowl shaped.
Yeah, like
You're just
start
giving
to
a
like
little bit
move it
of
into a bowl.
yeah.
And I have to go a little bit slower with that clay because of the way that it's made. So,
Yeah.
so yes, that is kind of like a variable too, that you have to, every clay has its own personality, and so you have to kind of adapt to that clay and how it works, and how it's best performed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Gosh,
Trying to
we
think of
didn't
what
even
other.
get into S poles and crab poles. I don't know if we should.
That's. I feel like that's very visual.
It
The
is a
S
very
pull and the
visual
crab pull.
situation.
Yeah, the fun thing was at ClayCon West, you were talking about. I don't even remember the topic, what it was called. Was it called wheel throwing efficiently or something?
I think so.
But you did kind of an exercise where you had different audience members come up and kind of do their normal thing with a cylinder, and you kind of guided them and told them where they could cut out certain steps that would make it more efficient and speedier. And like I threw up there next to you, and then Andrew Linderman threw up next to you.
Yeah.
Threw up. He threw side by side with you, and you all kind of like raced and stuff. So that was fun. Um, what's like how do you understand like what a good speed is? Is it just like being happy with making it at a certain pace and being happy with what the end result is? How do you like push yourself to go faster or
I think it's that whole idea of not being scared of the clay, you know? Um like the fact that you're in control of the clay instead of the clay being in control of you. Um and so when the speed is involved, and when you're centered, the speed doesn't usually have that much of an impact, you know? Obviously, you're slowing down, you know, like when I teach my classes, I'm like you're at like at the beginning, you know, you're on the highway, you're on the freeway, you know. And once you're getting into the last steps, you're moving into town, you're at 25 miles per hour instead of 70. So like, you know, you are changing up your speeds, but if you can, especially the fast speeds, you know, like the coning, the centering, the pulling out of the base, those all can be really fast. And so if you can make those even faster, then you can speed up your process. And because you can still focus and be slow on, you know, the last 3 steps of your process, or 4 steps if you want, and you're still not going to change that time exponentially unless you're futzing around with like the shape and stuff. But yeah, like I think it's finding like the lowest risk scenarios and making those the fastest speed, you know, like
the
because you
centering
you
for
wouldn't
sure,
want
the
to.
coning up and coning down? Like you have two
Yeah,
hands on the clay, like you're surrounding it, so it has less.
yeah,
You have less risk there as long as you don't cone it up
yeah, and
too
like
high, and then it gets weird or something.
right, and like I'm only coning twice, you know, and sometimes only cone once. When I started out throwing, I didn't cone at all. But you know, if you're using weird clay, that's not an option sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm like racing somebody, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm not going to cone that clay. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've
But
stopped coning for smaller things like spoon rests. Like if as long as I get it pretty close to the center or like almost on center, like move it as close to center before you start the wheel if you can. Like don't just throw it down
yeah,
and you're like, oh, it's way off center. I'm just gonna like strong arm it into center once I start throwing it. Like
totally.
don't overwork it. Like just get it to the center while it's stopped
Yeah.
and then go
Yeah,
for
and
it.
I think that also okay, there's two things. So, something that my teacher, Larry Bruning, always told me, and when he would teach, he would always say this. And I talked about this a couple of videos ago on my Instagram or my TikTok or something, is taking the clay to the furthest point that it can go. So, like, pushing it to or at its breaking point. So, like, you know, a lot of people are super, super safe on their pulls, which makes complete sense. When I'm doing my second pull, the first pull is pretty safe, right? When I'm doing my second pull, that's what I would refer to as an S pull. And I'm getting under it, and there is a visible curve in my throwing as I'm pulling up. And by the time that I've gotten to the top of whatever I'm pulling, if there's not just a smidgen of wiggle in the like in the middle of the piece where it looks like it's about to break, I haven't pulled it up as much as I can. So that's also another thing. Now, obviously, a lot of things you don't need to do it like that. Like yesterday, I was throwing these planters and they're like really thick all the way through. So you're not going to lose any. You're not going to pull it to its breaking point. But if you are making something larger, you're making something that can be thinner, pulling it to the point where the clay is just about to collapse and then going back and then reinforcing that's going to give you the most out of your clay that you can possibly get. And people are like, the comments on there was like, I can't do that. Like it's, well, I don't know if they said that, but like, the general consensus is, wow, you're using a lot more of the clay than I ever have. And yeah, because I've taken those 50 balls of clay and I've worked it to the point that it cannot be worked anymore to where it wasn't breaking and falling.
So you
Like,
know where that wall is, and you know
yeah,
how close you can get to it, and like what's going to
yeah,
take it over the edge. If you don't have enough water, you could start to torque it or whatever, and it'll
exactly.
kill it. You know the amount of water, you know the amount of speed, you know the amount of pressure, and all
Yeah,
that
you
stuff.
just have to be like, you have to be really familiar with your clay. You have to be best friends with the clay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there specific parts that you're like, this is would you say the wheel speed is the biggest part of like being the most efficient for you of like allowing you to get from beginning to end the quickest? Is that a big part of it?
No. No, I think that cutting out certain steps is the biggest part. Like really like, and moving your hands in a way that your hands are always doing something. Like when I'm grabbing water, my left hand is always doing something to progress the clay further, you know?
Yeah.
So, when I was teaching, I always taught to like do this step, step away from the wheel for a second, like take your hands off, reassess, then go back and then move. And once you get better, I think that you can cut all of that out and kind of like move and
Mm-hmm.
like always move yourself. Also, I think that throwing production throwing production is a different game all in itself too. Like when you're throwing 100 pieces versus throwing 20 pieces, like if I was throwing 20 pieces and I wanted to throw them fast, I would just bang them out. There's a total different feel when you're throwing like 125 every day, or 150 every day. It's a completely different like process. And it's more of like a tortoise wins the race issue, like situation than the hare.
So
Like,
you're still throwing them the same amount of speed from start to finish per piece, but something changes between pieces, or you just take breaks
I
after
feel
you fill
like,
boards up, or what's different? Because you said it's
yeah,
completely different.
I
But
think
what's
it is
completely
completely
different?
different. I feel like when I'm throwing like multiple pieces in a day, I'm not like trying to throw the fastest that I can possibly throw. It's not like you're in a race with somebody else on how fast you can throw. I'm still timing myself. I can still time myself to try to make sure that I'm pretty consistent most of
Not
the time.
per piece. You're timing yourself for a number of pieces or a
Yeah,
whole
for a number of
board.
pieces.
Yeah.
So like when I'm throwing crumbles, I have I do it in sets of 32. Yeah. I do it in sets of 32. So there's 8 crumbles per board, 4 boards per shelf space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do that in a number of minutes. Now, I could do it in 45 minutes. No, 32. I could do it in like 40 minutes. Okay, I could if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is that if I do it in 50 minutes and take a quick like if I take
Like
50 minutes, which is 2 episodes of MASH, if I
like
take
work yourself at 80% instead of 95% or
right, if I take 50
75%.
minutes, yeah, if I take 50 minutes and then take a 10-minute break between each one, and then actually, well, what I usually do is I do the first set of 32 and I take lunch, which is probably like 25 minutes. And I come back, do another set of 32, and then I have a snack. And then, which is like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then I do another set of 32, and then I walk around the studio, maybe once or
Yep.
twice. And then I do the last set of 32, and that's 124. And that's 50 minutes consistently with probably an hour break in the middle. So, and with like the weird things that happens, like you have to weigh out your clay and stuff like that, it usually ends up to being like 5 hours 30 to 6 hours. So yeah. So I found that is a pretty consistent pace for me, and also setting the amount of pieces that I want to make a day. So like, yes, I could throw 170 pieces a day. I could. I'd be throwing for probably 7 or 8 hours, and I would be fucking exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that once I get used to this and kind of get more consistent, I will gain in my stamina. But right now, 125 pieces or 124 pieces is, I think it's actually 128. 128 pieces is like my sweet spot. I could go home and I don't feel exhausted. I feel normal. And I am okay to come back the next day and do the exact same thing over and over again. Like this week is a really good example. I threw, let's see. I threw 100 and let's see. I threw 168 incense burners on Sunday, which they were really tiny, so they were easy to do. Like they took half the time that the crumbles take. And then the next day on Monday, I threw about 104 pieces. They were larger pieces, so they weren't like 6 ounces. They were 12 ounces. So, and they took a little, probably like 1.5 times the amount. But then on Tuesday, I trim on Tuesdays and I'm hourly on Tuesdays. And so on Tuesday, there was a shit ton of trimming to do, and I was there for 10 hours. Okay?
I feel like trimming takes so long.
I trimmed 400 pieces on Tuesday.
Oh my gosh. That sounds like the worst nightmare.
Let's see, I trimmed, I think, all of the incense burners and all of the cocktail cups that I had thrown, plus all of Dusty, like half of Dusty's stuff, all of Sarah's stuff, and then a lot of Ryan's stuff. So, but also Mackenzie helped, thank God. But we collectively trimmed like 450 pieces, somewhere in there. I don't know. It could have been less. It felt like 400. And I was there for 10 hours. That sounds like a
mountain. That feels like you're making no progress when you got 400.
Right. And I was there for 10 hours, and by the end of it, I was so tired. And I just like burned myself out that on yesterday when I came in, I only did 68 planters and 68 plus 25. So I did like 90. But like, it took me a long time to do those, and I was exhausted. And then today, I kind of got back to like 120. But you know, having like consistency through the week is going to help you long term, and like, and that's really important too. Like, don't think of it as a 1 day event. You need to think of it as a long term program.
Yeah, yeah, like a week at a time or a month at a time or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think how important are the breaks for you? I know you said the 10-minute breaks. Even though you're making the same thing, I think the breaks are pretty important because I've got to the point where I'm taking more breaks.
Yeah.
This year in the last few months than I have in years past. I might go from making 20 mugs, get those mugs complete, and I'm like, all right, now on to the next board. Let's throw 20 oil bottles. But I might like take a break and like go upstairs and snack on some peanuts or like eat something
Right.
or like I'm not going all out the whole night and then I get upstairs at 11:30 or midnight and then I eat something.
Right.
Like I'm taking breaks more often at reasonable times.
Yeah, I feel like you throw a lot. I feel like.
I think it makes it bearable because I mix up the types of forms that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that one day that you threw like 134 pieces or something like that.
I think that was probably a Sunday, right?
That was like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a Sunday. I probably mixed it up between spoon rests and shot glasses and maybe some bowls or maybe mugs. I mean, whenever I throw shot glasses, like those add up quick. Spoon rests add up quick. As long as I have the clay prepped, like I can throw those things. So, I mean, you have to have some foresight about what you want to be making and like what you need to, check off your list or whatever of restocking. I like to take a list of, like I have a master list kind of on a board of what I'd like to get stocked by like the spring or something. So I might have like oil bottles, red oil bottles, 50. Oil bottles with glass that are red, like 25. And I'm not going to throw 50 of those at once because I know that I can't handle throwing 50 of those at once. I will be exhausted because of the process of doing those. Like I like to throw those in batches of like 12 or 16 at a time.
Yeah, I think
because
that's
that fills up a board and it gives me like a good number to like get some consistency but also get some variability in them. If I was making 50, I would be like out. I would never want to make 50 of those all at one time.
Right.
But if it's something different like shot glasses, like I could fill up a whole board and make 35 of those at one time and that's not a big deal.
Right. Yeah, like I used to do sets of 70 of the pinch pots. Mm-hmm. No problem. Like, no problem.
Was that a whole mound of a 25-pound block of clay? Is that what your 70 was? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice because you get to gradually see your progress of the boards you're putting it onto, as well as the mound of clay is just getting closer and closer to nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and it gives you
a sense of a beginning and an end.
Right. And it's so satisfying, especially with something like that, when you come out to basically the same amount every single time. Like I would have 76 every single time. And I'm like, how the fuck does that happen? like
That's just you've made it so many times and the muscle memory kicks in.
Yeah. But also I was you mentioned like clay prep. I think that clay prep is really important to discuss as well because one thing that
what about doing that? Do you do it the same day that you actually throw the things?
Yes, most of the time. So here's the thing. So, so like Bradley pugs the clay. So everything is pugged. We just have to weigh it out, which is fine. And I actually sometimes use that as my break as well, And
you have tricks to weigh it out, right? You don't have to necessarily pull it off and like weigh it. Like you have little notches on cards and stuff that standardizes it.
And I think by now I've like seen those like amounts so many times that I just do it by eyesight now. Like I use one of those Mudworks clay, like the cutters, the big cutters, and then like a pound of clay is 2 inches on the big
Pugged.
turtle.
Yeah.
The pug. So, and I still weigh each one just to see if to make sure it's close, but it's you know it's generally pretty close. But I feel like that does take up a lot of time that you can't really account for sometimes.
Yeah.
Depending, like a lot of the time, I don't really look at what I need to throw the next day because I don't
That's
really
why.
prepare like that.
That's why I could throw so much, Becca. That's probably
I
why.
know.
Because I haven't prepped clay in a couple years, probably, or a
Yeah,
year and a
you
half.
have somebody prep it for you, which is really quite a luxury.
Yeah.
And so like for example, there's these plates that we've been doing, and they are prepped by slabs, and then they are thrown on the wheel. And the prep is a lot. It's a lot. And what you were talking about, like the oil bottles, like doing 50 of them, um, I came in and she wanted me to make like 60 plates. And I came in and did the prep for the plates. And it took me like an hour just to get the prep done. And I was like, no fucking way can I make 60 of these plates today. There's no fucking way. Like the plates take 2 minutes to throw, which is not that long. But the prep takes 2 minutes per plate.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's a good price per piece. Like, and the way she has it is like the so these are not the real numbers, but I'm just gonna say, like, let's say the plate is worth $1 and the prep is worth $1, and if you do both, it's what you get $2. That's not the cost, by the way. I'm just using those as good numbers. So I did the prep and then I did the plates, and I texted her and I was like, I will gladly pay somebody to do the prep for me.
Somebody
I
else
do.
can get that dollar.
Yeah, but the problem was that I was trying to do 60 plates, and prepping those plates was really hard on all of my body,
Yeah.
because you're throwing down slabs, you're cranking out the slab roller. Like, I was like, if I want to have shoulder surgery by the time that I'm 40, I would
Yeah.
be glad to do these, but I don't.
Yeah.
And it's like 11:30, and I should probably be quiet. And so I so anyway, we got it to a point where I was like, how about I do 20 plates a day? Like,
Yeah.
let's just even it out. Even out the plate.
Just slowly like trim away at that number.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's going to be a lot easier, but still, it's still even a little bit hard. It takes me 15 minutes to do about 20 slabs in prep, 15 to 20 to do slabs in prep, and then no, wait, that's a lie. It takes me like 40 minutes cuz no, I don't know.
It's just a lot,
Anyway,
It's a
it's a lot.
drain, and if you have to do something after that that needs your full attention, like
Yeah.
you can't work efficiently if your body's already exhausted.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start doing the plate prep. And I don't mind doing the prep if it's only like 20 plates. So I think that doing the plate prep like the night before is good, especially if it's kind of like a daily thing. But
Yeah.
sometimes that's not even like the plates aren't even a priority. So yeah. Yeah, it's all about like the prep, man. It can get you. Like when I didn't have all the weighing down, like where it was fast, I was like, fuck.
That's why I'd like to have at any point in time, I have like 500 pounds of clay that's already prepped in buckets, like ready to go. Probably not 500 pounds, probably like 250 pounds of clay that are in a variety of tidy cat buckets
Yeah,
around the
I
studio. And like, I've got 1 pounders, I got 3/4 pounders, I got 1.5 pounders, maybe 4 pounders, and they're in both white clay and red clay because I know, based on what I throw, I don't want to have to weigh out, 8 ounces if I only throw one form at 8 ounces. Like if I can double that up and make some different forms in the same weight, and I can make it work, like bowls and oil bottles and
Oh yeah, we
shallow
didn't
bowls,
talk
like
about
all
that.
of those are done with 1.5 pounds. So if I get a bucket of that, I can decide whatever the hell I want to throw with it. I could throw 12 oil bottles, fill a board, and then throw the rest of the bucket in bowls, and like it keeps my sanity to mix up what I'm doing.
Totally. I think that that's a really good point that you made. That and we both do this. Is creating pieces based on weight, essentially, instead of creating pieces and then figuring out the weight for those pieces. So
Like saying I want to make a 12-ounce mug or something. Is that what you mean?
yeah. So like instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to make this mug, let's see how much it weighs," saying, "Oh, I want to make a mug. It's going to weigh 12 ounces." Like
I do. I don't really care to say like I know this mug is gonna hold about 10 to 12 ounces. If I make it straight walled, it's gonna hold about 10 ounces. If I put a belly on it, it's probably gonna hold 12 to 14 ounces or 12 ounces
right.
probably.
But the point being is that we both have multiple products that are in the same weight of clay so that we don't have to work on like, we're not scooting back and forth between different weights.
Yeah,
Like
I probably have like 7 weights generally of different like forms, and that's gonna cover all of my pieces for the most
I
part.
think I had like 4 when I
4,
was doing it. I had, let's see.
maybe less than 7, but I mean I wouldn't count like shot glasses or you wouldn't count pinch pots as weights, right? I
No.
mean you're throwing it off the hump, so there's no
Yeah,
like
no.
measured weight.
So like sponge holders and small bowls and small cups were all 8 ounces. Well, they were all 10 ounces first, but then when I got the pug mill, they turned into 8. So 8 ounces. And then wine glasses and mugs used to be 14 ounces, but then I switched it over to 16 ounces for mugs and then 14 ounces for wine glasses. And bowls are 1.5 pounds, and plates are 2 pounds. Maybe 2.5. I can't remember.
Plates are 2? What?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I probably have closer to 10 if I include plates because I have like a 3-pound plate, which is about 10 inches maybe,
Yeah.
and then a 5-pound plate is like 12 inches.
Holy shit. That's a lot of clay.
Yeah, I haven't thrown those plates in a while, but
That's a big plate.
yeah, I don't really throw plates anymore. But that actually probably not 12 inches. What's the biggest wheel head size? Like 14 inches?
14 inches.
It's probably more like maybe the edge is 14 inches wet and then it shrinks to 12 inches.
Oh, nice. That's a huge plate.
Yeah. That's like a big dinner plate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a platter. That's a platter.
Well, I haven't thrown them in a while. I mean, I'm sure I could probably get away with 4 pounds, but just to be safe.
Yeah.
And I still trim a lot of those, or trim a lot off of those. What about trimming? We didn't talk about trimming at all. Is there any efficiencies in trimming? How do you trim at Gravesco? For instance, you're doing 400. You all use the Giffen grip for the most part for
Yeah.
most of the pieces?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you all,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be feasible to use like a foam pad or
I mean,
like
I think that
a
if
sticky
I
bat
was
or
trimming,
something.
I think if I was trimming, I'd probably use a foam pad. But the Giffen grip does it's easy, and it centers things, and it's also anybody can use a Giffen grip, like
Yeah.
you can teach anybody how to trim.
I would say
And
the clay lugs are like, get that shit out of here.
oh yeah,
Like,
clay
you're
lugs
talking about
need to be out of
efficiency,
your life.
you should never be using those clay lugs unless you're doing like a few big bowls or something and you're worried about it flipping off and you don't have a big enough bat or something. Like you
Yeah.
might need to use the clay lugs, but if you're
I
doing
think
like everyday bowls, these GP bowls, like
yeah,
find a way that you can trim them with a foam pad or a sticky bat or a Giffen grip
Giffen
or
grip.
something.
or
I
a
used
chuck.
to do the suction thing or a chuck.
Yeah,
I used to do suction where you like wet the rim and then you like push it down on like a speedball bat to where it's like
yeah, but
airtight.
even then, the integrity of the rim like gets compromised a little bit.
Yeah,
But
because it's not the easiest to get off there all the time.
yeah, I think that chucks are underrated
I've
too.
barely used a chuck. I don't, because you'd have to do it wet and then you gotta like get it the right shape, but also like make sure it doesn't get too sticky and stuff.
No, you can make bisque chucks.
Oh, you're talking about centering the chuck and just clay lugging the chuck and then just keeping the chuck on there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're producing a consistent shape, especially if it's a cylinder, a chuck would be perfect because then you could just plop it right on and center it down. And a lot of people put like a little bit of wet clay on the top of like a bisque chuck just to keep it centered and stuff. We have a chuck for those like tiny little cones that I was throwing. I I was like, Ellie, how is trimming these? And she's like, it freaking sucks. And I was like, I think I'm gonna make you a chuck. And so I made her a chuck, but it was mostly for me because I knew I had to
Oh,
trim
I know
them.
the cone you're talking, the little volcano-shaped
Yeah, it's like
planters
a
that
little
you made
volcano.
last year.
Yeah, it's like a little volcano, and it just works to put it right into a chuck.
Yeah,
So,
trimming those would suck otherwise.
but I mean, like, also, both you and me, like, me personally, I don't trim everything, you know?
Yeah, I trim very little.
Yeah. Like, I got to a point, and that also helps with your consistency and your lack of waste while throwing, is that I also got to a point where I was throwing and cutting off to a point where the piece looked almost finished, so I didn't have to worry about, you know, trimming anything
Yeah,
because
I
it
mean, if
didn't
I had to,
look like it needed it.
yeah, if I had to trim all my mugs, like I would produce half the number of them, and it would up my price to like $45 for my like, like, I would have to up the price significantly to if they were trimmed. Not 45 probably, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That
But I
just
mean, a
seems.
trimmed mug does look nice.
It does. Like I really like if I'm looking at trim pieces, like I really love a nice trimmed like tea bowl.
Mm,
Those look good,
yeah. Yep.
but it
And
depends
like
on what you're
we
going
lift
for.
everything off with pot lifters, so everything has to be trimmed anyway. So,
Yeah, I like to do the, I like to rib everything for the most part if I can, and then lift it off with my hands. If it's like mugs and stuff. If it's bowls, I'll keep them on the bat. But
yeah.
all right, I think we hit a lot, way more than we considering we just threw together this last hour.
I'm glad that you're okay with just being like, yeah, let's just change it.
Well, I mean, I didn't realize where we were, so I was like, all right, let's keep going. Yeah, so I mean, most of that was obviously wheel throwing heavy. Did you have anything quick for hand building efficiencies or anything like that? I don't hand build, so I don't have any
I
advice
do,
there.
actually. I do have some stuff for hand building efficiencies. Um, do everything in batches. That's my biggest thing.
Isn't that kind
Is
of the
that
same
if
thing? Do everything in 20 to 30 when you're throwing, do everything in batches?
I mean
What do you
kind of,
mean by
but
that?
like if you're gonna make okay, if you're gonna make plates, let's say you're making 6-inch plates, um, and you're hand building, cut all of the pieces of clay that you need all at once. Then slab all the pieces of clay that you need all at once. Then cut all those pieces of
Oh,
clay all at once.
I, I gotcha.
Don't do a single plate every single time. That's going to waste so much time. Do it all at once. Like when I do the prep for those plates, I figured out that you can get 4 cuts of the clay, like a block of clay. Also, um, when you're doing hand building, you should be cutting your clay sideways. So long ways, not square, not the square on the top. Turn the block sideways and cut from that. And the reason being is because blocks also come out of a pug mill. So, like the block of clay that you have does come out of a pug mill, and that spiral is in the center of that going out. So, if you cut on the top,
You're getting a spiral on
oh,
every single cut.
you're getting,
It's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
kind of
You're
like you're
getting,
cutting the grain, kind of like the grain of a baseball bat or something. Like you're like
yeah.
instead of cutting straight across. Yeah.
Or like rye bread, like marbled rye bread, like when you cut marbled rye bread, you know, it has a spiral in there. So if you cut it on the short side, like the square side, then it's going to have that, and then you have a much more likelihood of cracking than if you cut it sideways.
Oh.
So for instance, these plates, I can do 5 plates out of one bag. They're pretty thick. So I cut all of the bags. Like I cut one bag into 5 pieces and I stack them up crisscrossed. And then I get the other bag and I cut all of those and I stack them up. So I have 10
Mm-hmm.
things high. And then I
You put a couple side
cut.
by side on the slab roller?
No, I do it one at a time. But so
Oh,
then I'll,
okay.
depending on the clay, one of our clays sticks together, so I have to do it one at a time. But then I'll do all of the, flatten them all out, or like throw them on the table to prep them
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time, and then I'll those ones I have to roll them out and then cut them. That's one step, rolling them out and then cutting them. But if I was at my studio back home and I was using the clay that I was using, I would always do all the slabs and stack them up, and then I'd take those slabs and then cut them, and then I'd stack those cut slabs, and then I would take those and then form them, and that would be it.
So wait,
So
those slabs you're cutting off and you're rolling it through the slab roller, or you're not?
you are. So
You
okay,
are. So you
so
rolling it
you
through
cut
as you
off the
stack it?
slab.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so you cut off the slabs and you stack all your slabs, and then you have to prep all the slabs by slamming them on the table to get them a little bit
Okay.
thinner and to your consistency, and then you stack all those. And you take all the stacked ones and then you roll those through the slab roller, and then your
Okay.
thinner slabs that are already rolled, you stack all of those, and then you cut those into the circles or whatever shape you need,
Yeah.
and then you stack those circles, and then from those circles, then you take them and then you form them, and then you have your shape.
Yeah, okay.
So
Is
that's
that
my
common
that
for
would
people to start beginning to end like with a single plate? It just is that more like people worried about the dryness or something, like worried that if
I
they
don't
do
know.
6 of them that they can't get to them quick enough. They might the first one or the last slab might be too
Sometimes,
dry.
yeah, I definitely, obviously, I definitely think that like certain specific shapes need to be done one at a time, or like if you're using a fine porcelain or whatever, it needs to, you have to figure out your drying. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I think that I could be wrong, but I think that we focus a lot more on production within throwing than we do in like slab work and hand building. And so obviously there are production hand builders out there, but I don't think that it is emphasized as much. And
Mhm.
so and
That reminds me of something I want to ask
well, yeah, and so
Amy Brumond if we talked with her about how she works through her hand building.
that's Pines in, right, Amy?
Yeah,
I got one of her mugs this week and it's
I
beautiful.
know. It's nice.
Pines in pottery. So good.
Yeah, I'm writing that down.
Um yeah, I think that we don't focus on production in slab building as much. Um, a lot of the people I see doing slab building are doing them one at a time, but I could be wrong. I'm sure there's a ton of people doing production in slab building. We just don't see it as much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm thinking of like there's a lot of steps on some people's work. Like,
Yeah,
Amy's for
tons of
instance,
steps.
she's got the slabs, but she also has the transfer stuff, and then she also has to stamp everything, and then she has
Right?
to cut it out of a shape. I'm guessing,
Yeah.
form it, join it, all that stuff, and then any additional decorating or whatever like um
Yeah, I mean, obviously
yeah
everything
there's
is specific, you know,
yeah
within what those are, but I'm sure that there's always steps that you can like dwindle down.
yeah. I mean, my mugs, I've been for the carved mugs, I've been trying to, if I can, instead of doing so many like all at once. Well, like I'll throw a bunch of them at once, so I'll throw like 15 mugs, right? And then I will get them ready, put them in a damp box, and then handle all 15 of them, put them back in the damp box, and then get them ready for underglaze, and then they'll get, I'll do like maybe 4 different colors or 5 different colors and do like 3 of each color
Mm-hmm.
so that I have a mix of different colors rather than doing 15 of the same color. Just so I have an assortment. And then I'll usually carve a handful of them at once and kind of go that route. So, but like some of that, like if you had to stamp stuff all day, like that's really taxing on your hands if you had to do the
Yeah,
same thing. Like working a little bit at a time could be better for your production.
totally. Yeah, I think that, well, and everybody has their own speed and their own pace and their own systems, you know. Obviously, you can always improve a system. You can always improve a system no matter the system. I can improve my systems, you know. Um but it's just whatever makes you feel comfortable. We didn't talk about handles either. You can do, like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of different types of handles. Like, a ton of people just throw, like, you pull straight from the handle, but there's a bunch of
straight from the
different,
mug.
straight from the mug, but there's a bunch of different ways that you can actually prep clay for those. Like, you know, you can extrude like all the handles and cut them to size and then pull them
Yep.
that way. You can do slab handles. There's a ton of different ways that you can do different things. And, like, we extrude at Gravesco, they extrude tubes and then they flatten out, like, they shape the handles. But they put all of their handles in a wet box, you know?
Yeah.
So that they can be
So
prepared for
somebody
them.
can just get over to it, be like, all right, you're handling. All right, the clay's in the damp box. Like, go for it.
Right. So that's a good way. I used to keep all my handles in a damp box and
You're
then
like
pull them.
lugs of clay
They were extruded,
extruded. Okay.
but I always pulled after that anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different steps in there that you could find. Is some of that just going to other people's studios and seeing how they work and kind
yeah,
of pulling from that?
I think so. I think, like, that's where I learned a lot of my techniques. Like when I started doing production hand building, I learned most of that from Gravesco, and and like doing production like pottery, I learned that from Larry Bruning, his studio. And yeah, just like going to different studios and like meeting other people and seeing their systems and seeing their processes, it's so helpful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So we mainly focus on a lot of wet clay stuff. I'm sure we could talk later about production of like glazing techniques and stuff like that or whatever.
You
Um,
can talk about that.
I'll talk about that later. So I was just thinking about that. I was like, maybe there's some stuff to discuss there, but I still feel like that's kind of inefficient on my side. But I use a lot of colors. Um, okay, all right. Minute 45 approaching, or hour 45
A
approaching.
minute.
Minute 45. Yeah, right.
I think the biggest thing is that, like, we talk about things that we do and like steps that we've made to like speed up our process, but I am an individual and what I do may not work for everybody. And I think that that's really important to say
Yeah.
if you made it this far.
And you can't
But
just sacrifice quality for speed too. You can't say, "Well, I have to do
right.
it as fast as I possibly can," with sacrificing quality. Like you either have quantity or quality. It's like you got to retain both and figure out the balance that works for you.
Right. It's not like I'm not sacrificing the integrity of my throwing. Like, I figured out how to throw well before I figured out how to throw well fast. So, but I did practice throwing fast too. I think that that's also important.
Hmm.
I remember one of my teachers in high school said, like, they were doing track or something like that. And she was like, if you want to learn how to run fast, you practice running fast. If you want to learn how to run long, you practice running long. So, whatever you want to learn how to do, you practice that specifically. And I think that that applies to this as well.
Yeah. And with that,
And with that, Lloyd is
we
staring at me.
we bid you adieu.
So long, farewell. Bye.
All right, bye.
Hey guys, thank you thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate it, and we're having so much fun. If you want to follow us individually on Instagram, you totally can. Ryan's Instagram handle is at RD Ceramics, and mine is 5 Lines Pottery. That's the number 5. We would love to hear from you, and don't forget to write us a review on our podcast. We read every single one of them, and we totally appreciate them. They help us out an awful lot, and they also put smiles on our faces. I hope you guys continue to listen, and we love you. Thanks. Bye.